Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Recently, Owlcat did a couple of interviews for a website called The Gamer. Full transparency, I've never read an article from The Gamer before, but shout out to the people on my Discord. They sent me a link to this sit down Owlcat had, which it kind of seems like the conversation was supposed to be about player freedom and how Owlcat is adjusting that to account for the Warhammer lore, but it ended up being about LGBTQ plus romances. And yikes, this is not the greatest of looks. So I feel the need to say up front, I think the way Outcat Games is represented in this article is really unfair. I think if you look at the past two games that they have made, it shows a strong support for the queer community. In fact, to be honest with you, from a romance standpoint, I consider Outcat to be the new BioWare as far as the depth of their romances and their willingness to make sure people from different slices of life are represented and can have a relationship that really reflects what it is that they prefer. You don't really get the sense of any of that from this article, and I think it's deeply unfortunate. And I think it speaks poorly of the people who wrote this. That being said, there are some criticisms brought up regarding Rogue Trader in this article that I do think are legitimate, and I think it's worth going over. So we're going to talk about that while we go through this. But again, I want to reiterate on the whole, I think historically, Alcan has been very supportive of the queer community, and that should be kept in mind when you're having this sort of dialogue. So, with all that being said, let's get into the article. Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader devs would love to have more LGBTQ plus romance options, but won't. Come on now. Did you really have to use that title? So it starts out with Owlcat Games is making a Rogue Trader game. Rogue Traders have warrants of trade, and this allows them to skirt Imperial laws and live in a way that most humans are not able to in the Warhammer universe. So, on one hand, Owlcat wants to give players more freedom and give them the same type of experience they would expect from an Owlcat game, but at the same time, they have to curtail that to some degree to ensure that the lore is held up on a more substantive level, right? And so, because of that, that means that they have to limit your romance options, much to the chagrin of alpha and beta players. A couple of party members, among others, are not romanceable, no matter the gender of your rogue trader. The restriction on not being able to romance Sister Argenta, something we've talked about multiple times on this channel, in particular bothers players as more people are interested in shacking up with a sexy warrior nun than a weird half-robot dude who speaks to his rifles. I wanted to call out this part of the article because I looked at the bio on the website for the guy who wrote this, and he says he specializes in Warhammer, which I found interesting because I could be wrong. I'm new to Warhammer, so let me know if I'm tripping. But it seems to me someone who's actually into Warhammer and understands how amazing and incredible the Adeptus Mechanicus group is wouldn't say something like, oh man, nobody wants to romance the weird half robot Magus Explorator. Like, dude, what are you talking about? Not to mention the fact that Pascal is one of the most popular characters that's come out of the beta thus far. Anyway, moving on. So the writer of this article is actually directly interviewing a couple of people associated with Owlcat Games, and one of them is narrative lead Olga Kellner, and they say sometimes romances were removed for lore reasons, and sometimes it was for character consistency. Because, for example, Seneschal Abelard, there are some things in the character's background, his relationship with your predecessor, and his relationship with his dead wife because he's a widower, that it just didn't feel right to implement romance because it would go against the narrative. It wouldn't be true to his character, right? And so all of that makes sense. And I actually prefer it when characters operate in this way. I personally don't like the Baldur's Gate 3, Dragon Age 2 way of doing romances where it seems like all the party members are pretty much available to you regardless of what race or gender you have chosen. I definitely preferred when party members have a preference, and hopefully there's content in the romance that kind of speaks to that preference. Why do you prefer boys? Why do you prefer the company of women? Well, you tell me some things about what makes you tick and why this is the way you are. And so I prefer it when they're more distinguished in that way. And so this answer definitely works for me. This next part highlights one of the main criticisms. So, the author of the article, he's interviewing these people, and he says, however, when I mention that gay men or players role playing a gay male inquisitor are disappointed that there's only one unpalatable romance option available to them, the only possibility is an alien terrorist who you may not even recruit, the mood in the Discord call gets immediately frosty. All right, so the author calls the exchange frosty, right? And later on, he says that the people from Owlcat games that he talked with, they were defensive and that they were clearly afraid of being labeled as homophobic, blah, 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 right? So first and foremost, I feel like I should reiterate that Owlcat, when it comes to queer romances, has a very, very strong record. Like all developers, they clearly have a slant towards the male player. So women are more sexually available than men are. But in Kingmaker, you had a gay male romance, and in Wrath of the Righteous, you had two. And in all three cases, these were strong characters and fully fleshed out romances. These were not people who were just thrown into the game to, give gay male players a bone. Like these were fully developed characters where even as someone who is not gay, totally comfortable having these people in my party because I'm like, these are just cool people to have in a group. Great banter, great mechanics, etc., etc. So to try to represent them as having a queer issue now, all of a sudden, to me is wrong. And it discounts their history in a way that I don't believe is really fair journalistic practice. That being said, that being said, this criticism regarding the unpalatable gay male romance option, in my opinion, it's legit. And I think it's an unforced error on Owlcat's part. I don't understand why they did this. So, for those of you who are not already aware, the only gay male romance in the game is a Drukhari. Drukhari are known in Warhammer for being the most evil and despicable characters throughout the galaxy. They specialize in murder and torture and skinning humans alive and making furniture out of their skin, literally. All right. These are people who the vast majority of players are not going to be comfortable having them in their party, gay players included. So you've taken the only gay male romance and made him someone that the vast majority of players will want to have nothing to do with, right? That's problematic in and of itself. But to take it a little bit deeper, and I know there are going to be multiple people watching this who are going to have an issue with me saying this, but sometimes you have to be able to take what's in the game and allow it to correlate with what's in real life. You can't always pretend that real life doesn't exist. All right. Drukhari are known for hedonism and sexual impropriety. All right. This is a core part of their lore. The vast majority of people watching this video are adults. So therefore, most of us have seen some of the rhetoric from people who are strongly anti-gay. What do they say about gay men? They are sexually impure. They are engaging in hedonism. The lifestyle that they are engaged in is something nobody of pure good stock will want to be associated with. All right. So all of the negative connotations, the discrimination, the things that have been said about gay men since before I was born, it perfectly applies to Drukhari. All right. And I'm sorry, you can try to make the whole case. Hey, it's just a game. It shouldn't matter, blah, 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 blah. My stance, this is an unforced error. Can you do it? Sure, you could do it if you really, really decide that this fits into the story you want to tell and the game you want to create. You can do it, but why? Why? Why are you putting yourself in a position where articles like this get written about you? I don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe I'll understand when I play the game, but I doubt it. I think this is just a flat out, straight up, unforced error. And to be completely honest with you, I think the entire way that Owlcat has handled talking about romances up to this point is also an unforced error. This is coming from someone who loves romances, who feels like every RPG should have romances, and I'm absolutely looking forward to the romances in this game. Owlcat should not have talked about romances. They knew up front, hey, we're only going to have one gay male option, and it's going to be a Drakari. A lot of people are probably going to be pissed about that. And they knew up front, hey, the coolest female team member, the coolest party member that we have is someone who's not going to be romantically available. There's probably going to be a lot of players who are upset about that. They shouldn't have talked about romances. They should have just talked about mechanics and the way the party members look and their voice actors. And when the subject of romance came up, be like, you know what? It's a Warhammer game. Romances are not really the focus. They're in there, and they'll be of the same quality that you all are used to. But we want to just go ahead and let players find out about it. And we'll use the lead up to the game to talk about everything else. And then you wouldn't be having any of these issues. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense to have a whole trailer focused around, hey, this is who dates women, this is who dates men, when you already know a lot of people are not going to like the news that you have anyway. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. But anyway, moving on. So the author then goes on to say that lesbian players suffer from a similar issue to gay men, with just one bisexual character to romance, an incredibly generic banker. Not only is this a trash thing to say, it's flat out untrue. She's not generic and she's not a banker. She's a pirate who specializes in smuggling alien weapons, which is a big deal in Warhammer because you're not even supposed to look at anything that's alien. So to try to represent her as just some okie doke character that Owlcat threw in there, nah, that's whack. That's wrong. And again, the way this guy represents Owlcat just doesn't make any sense. So then the executive producer, Anatoly Shevtsov, talks a little bit about whether or not they would be willing to implement more LGBTQ plus options into the game. And he says it's not about those options. It's about the narrative of the whole picture that we envisioned and want to elaborate on. We didn't see the romances as an option to point out any such aspect. We see any romance as our way to elaborate on the stories in the most personal way. For us internally, it's not the story of the gay person or straight person. It's a story of a seneschal who lost his wife, or a story of a blood-soaked sociopath who can challenge his own thoughts, or a story of an entire species who can change its own perspective of the world through you. These are the things that we want to tell, and we pick the best options to highlight the strength of the story, both in the models, in the portraits, in the voiceovers, and all of the aspects. That answer makes complete sense for me, right? We have a specific story, we have a specific setup, and we put in what we felt like would work for that. More queer relationships, for whatever reason, doesn't fit into that storyline, and so we didn't do them, right? To me, that's a responsible answer. You can leave a comment down below if you feel differently. Maybe this doesn't work for you, but that's my perspective on it. Unfortunately, I feel like they dilute that answer with the next part. It's not like we have a quota. No, we want to tell a strong story. We found the best possible in a given budget and time frame options to deliver it. And that's how we ended with the given set of the romances. No, don't do that. Don't make it seem like it's a budget and time issue. That's what developers have been doing for 20, 30, 40 years, saying, well, hey, we can't put in more queer people, or we can't provide representation in such and such a way because there's not enough budget and time to be able to do it. No, that's not the issue. The issue is you had a specific story you wanted to tell, and doing more of whatever wouldn't fit into that. To me, it goes back to like when the Witcher series was out, right? They used to call CDPR racist because they didn't have any black people in the Witcher games. Me personally, I never had an issue with them not having black people in the game. They're like, hey, I want to tell this story that's set in medieval Poland. Ain't no black people there, so we don't put no black people in the game. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I wasn't good with the first one where you have no black people except one who basically looks like a demon and you make him the main villain. If you're going to have no black people, then please just have no black people. But in general, the idea that they didn't, try to force in more black people in the game, that's not the story they wanted to tell. And so I'm good with that. Just stand on the story you wanted to tell. In the story of Rogue Trader, there is no room for a heterosexual relationship with Sister Argenta or a homosexual male relationship with any characters outside of Drukhari. I don't understand why you made the second choice. Again, I think that's an unforced error, but that's what fits with your story. Fine, stand on it. This is not a budget and time frame issue. Like that's not the problem. If more of those type of romances fit into your story, you would have fit that in. Shestov goes on to explain the process of game development and that budget and salary constraints all contribute to cutting content. Owlcat prioritized the most immersive features, so naval combat in outer space. A very impressive system to have built from scratch made the cut instead of more romances. I felt like it was worth calling this sentence out because if you look on Reddit, there's a whole line of people basically saying, why don't you cut out these resource management systems you keep putting into the game and spread that money around into other areas, including obviously the romances. I'm not one of those people. I actually enjoy Crusade management. In fact, I enjoy Kingdom management a little bit more, but I'm not a believer in naval combat. Already on record about that. And as far as I'm concerned, the fact that he says a very impressive system I have built from scratch shows he didn't play the beta. All right, there's nobody who actually played through the beta who was like, man, this naval combat, holy smokes, I can't believe they did this. Now, maybe when the game fully releases, we'll feel that way. But right now, nah, stop it. Stop it. Circling back to romance options, he says players take umbrage with the fact that the already limited options are even further limited if you're playing as a gay rogue trader. The "we see past sexuality" line doesn't hold up when straight players are afforded the luxury to pick and choose who they romance and gay players are not. All right, it's going to be petty for me to bring this up right now, but still, the whole luxury to pick and choose thing kind of struck a little nerve with me. So a little bit of privilege on my part is going to show, but I can think of multiple games where there were queer options for both men and women available, but I did not have the option to romance a black woman if I wanted to. In fact, it's a pretty standard trope in video games that they make these amazing, incredible black women as party members and then make them non-romanceable for no reason, as far as I can tell. Rogue Trader is no different. Adhere to Last, they've already confirmed she's not going to be romanceable. Why? Who knows? So the idea that I've had the luxury to just pick and choose whatever partner I want while gay players are just getting shafted, I don't really feel that way, to be honest with you. I don't feel like I'm getting what I want either. So we're all just working with what we're given, dude. When in real life, Warhammer communities are so dominated by straight men, it would have been refreshing for LGBTQ plus players. Why does he drop the Q? I don't, this article seems to be real inconsistent on that. I don't understand. LGBTQ plus players to see themselves better represented in the 40K universe in a game that promises to offer more role-playing opportunities than any Games Workshop affiliated title to date. I don't understand why he put that statement in here. To me, maybe I'm wrong. I think it hurts his argument. He's basically saying, hey, man, most of the people who consume this content are straight men. So you should just put in some queer content into there. Like, no. And the reason why I feel like it hurts this argument as well is because what I hear all the time when these kind of conversations come up is, well, gay people are only 5% of the population. Why would developers make a whole bunch of changes for people who only make up 5%? Which does not take into account the fact that the queer community is overrepresented in the gaming population. Sure, they might make 5 to 10% of our overall global population, but they do not make up 5 to 10% of the 5 to 10% of the people who purchase video games, right? There's a very large percent of that community that purchases video games and supports games, right? And Owlcat games are no different. So to me, instead, you would go the route of saying, hey, there's a bunch of people from the community that are going to be playing this game and supporting it, and they want to see themselves represented. And that's why it's so important for you to make sure there's content for them. Not this in real life communities are dominated by straight men. What are you doing? As it stands, it feels like they've been overlooked, and the developers are offering a blanket "we didn't have enough for a lesbian" statement that seems to willfully misunderstand the issue. Owlcat implemented the romances, so it could have implemented more of those options by simply balancing the number of straight and LGBTQ plus party members to better reflect the post-gender society they inhabit. There does not need to be balance between the number of straight and LGBTQ plus party members. All right. It's whatever the developer wants to do. Okay. At some point, I haven't done it yet, but at some point, I'm going to play David Gator's Stray Gods. All right. If there's no heterosexual romances in that game, I would not be shocked at all. Right. The whole project's being led by a gay man. He's finally in control. He might have completely decided, you know what, there's only room for homosexual relationships in my game. That's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. There does not have to be balance. What you do have to ensure, though, is that if you're going to do this romance, that is done with respect, that it's done well. Without having actually experienced it, with just knowing the outside details, I feel like they could have done a better job with the gay male romance, right? But the issue is not that there's only one. All right, I think that's enough of that. Again, I feel like Owlcat really didn't get a fair shake in this article, but some of the critiques that were offered up certainly worth talking about, and just in general, conversation is interesting, right? So, looking forward to hearing your feedback. I'm sure there will be disagreements and people with their own strong perspectives, but I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Hope all of you enjoy this video. Take care.